Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Can you see my screen? Sweet. Any questions?
I was muted.
Oh my gosh. What's your question? What were you saying?
I was
Nothing?
talking. I was muted, but
That's all. You were just talking.
I do have a question for you. If like no one else has anything to say immediately, but I was
do it.
just kind of curious, like what was slash is like I guess as far as like your most challenging obstacles in order to overcome, or obstacles.
As an artist, the most challenging obstacles. I don't like this brush. I like some of it, but don't like a lot of it. Okay, hold on. Let me try again. Round 2. Fight. All right. Consistency. That's always going to be the hardest. As you could probably tell, I'm a person who tries to come up with like things like generalities and rules to kind of live by. Because just like the world's complicated, and there's so many things to kind of think about, and just to make it more complicated just does not feel like a good time. And so whenever I was trying to get good at anything, I would always do what I like to call is find the core. Like, what's the core principles that all I should care about? And then that way I'm being more efficient about my training, being more efficient about what I pay attention to. But it is hard to find that core. It requires a lot of research and examples, This is why I respect the scientists, the sciences. It's because it's the same approach that they do, at least good sciences, right? And it works for the most part, right? Like sciences can come up with crazy inventions that, you and I would have never thought about, but that's the point. Like that's all they think about,
Yeah.
And so they just keep thinking about all of the variations and all of the manifestations that can come from, actually, no, the more I think about this other brush, the more I like. And so what is it that they do that most people don't? Well, they're consistent. They just kind of keep working, and keep exploring. Again, good sciences. Good scientists don't just assume, they just try to find the answer,
Yeah.
And one thing that I heard recently, it was on a TikTok, where some father was teaching his son how to box, and his son was like crying because he just was like not getting it. He was like failing a lot. And his father said something really profound, which I thought was really great. And where he was basically saying like, hey, there's nothing wrong with messing up. It's like, you've never done this before, right? Of course you're gonna be messing up. And he's like, you know what Einstein once said? He said, it's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. It's just that I stick with problems longer. And when I heard that, I was just like, yep, Einstein gets it. You know what I mean? And if you look at a lot of great minds and great people in our history, it's pretty consistent, like this kind of attitude of persistence and consistency. There's a book that I read. It's called Mastery. You should read it if you haven't already. And all that book is just validation to everything I taught you in this class. It just goes through one historic badass after another historic badass and just talks about their perseverance and their diligence. And so when you ask me, like, what's the hardest thing to do as an artist? That's not an easy answer, because I know what you're trying to say is like, okay, what are like the specific skills that are really challenging? That's different for lots of different people, right? Because of cultural differences, interests, right? There's so many variables that go into what that means in terms of challenging. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But what's consistent with across the board is that people aren't as consistent as they should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and so I would say that's the hardest. It's even hard still for me, like to kind of just stay consistent on things that I start. I wish I was perfect at this. I can only name a couple people who are really just perfect at consistency. One of them is Vitaly Bogorov. He's really good about just sticking to it. He's like about to release his own game pretty soon, and like that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
He just stayed with it for freaking years until he released it, and
Jeez.
it's pretty cool. But it's not like a surprise, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a lot of people are really excited about it. So hopefully it turns out great. And so, you know, to me, that's the hardest thing. All the other things are hard just because of like the lack of insight and naiveness that I would have when I first started, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But once I get into it, it's not too big of a deal. Like I would always find this pattern of like once I get started and then I start seeing a pattern, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it just got a lot easier after that.
Yeah.
But it was that like going like every day, doing it every day. That's
Yeah.
hard. Just like waking up and just doing it. Oh, great example. There was that car tutorial. I still have yet to open it. You know, that's a great example. Like I should just fucking watch it. You know,
Yeah.
and it's nothing surprising. You know, probably what makes me feel not too bad about it is because I am good about like watching stuff in general. Like I've been watching a lot of videos just on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the same subject, but I got this tutorial very specifically, so I just need to like start paying attention to it. Yes, son? Oh, okay. Hold on, guys. Need to find diapers. Yeah, that's to me is like the hardest. Aside from that, the hardest like fundamental drawing stuff to learn is all the classics, perspective, anatomy, and generally design. Just foundational knowledge is really hard to practice for a couple reasons. It's usually very complex in terms of where to start, and it's also just tedious, just like monotonous, just grind work. If you ever play a video game, it's like when you're playing like WoW, like World of Warcraft, it's just grinding by killing tons of animals to get their leather skin and doing that for countless hours. That's pretty much what it is to get good at these things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Oh boy, I need some reference. I do not know how to draw vehicles, homies. I'm like struggling for real. It's hard. But I have gathered reference galore. I am prepared for this.
I got a question when you're ready.
All these references. Yeah, boy. I'm ready.
So I realized I don't really know what a concept artist does on like a day-to-day basis of like what you kind of like do on the job.
We just make pizza and just talk about video games all day.
That sounds pretty good. Okay.
So that's it. Nothing else to that. So a concept artist, the simplest way I could put this, a concept artist essentially helps come up with the visual solutions to many ideas. Okay. We are the cheapest line of defense, you know? So imagine that you're making a project, right? And let's take Harry Potter, for instance. And you're designing Harry Potter for the first time. No one's ever seen it, but there's been books. Okay. So there's descriptions of characters, places, what have you, right?
Yeah.
So when they're like, hey, you know, we need somebody to design Harry Potter, like that's what the character artist would do, like design the costume, the look of him.
Right.
And you just do that until the people who are in charge, usually directors and production designers, are like, tight, that's Harry Potter.
I was
You
just
know?
wondering if if you get like you just get like a brief in and then you're just like working the whole day, like more along the lines of like what you're doing, like, you know, like you're just designing all day pretty much, and then
Yeah, so
Just how it
so
rolls.
going back to the story that I was telling,
Mhm. Sure.
is essentially you get the like draw Harry Potter, and then you're just all right, and so you start drawing Harry Potter until everyone approves, and then all right, tight, now let's draw, you know, Hogwarts. Maybe you're also doing that too. You're doing everything. So then you start drawing Hogwarts, just a bunch of designs until again everyone approves. And then all right, you know, we need to draw like the bad guys. I don't remember all the bad guys' names, but you get my point.
Voldemort or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, Voldemort. Yeah, sure. Like the main one. But like all the other supporting characters and what have you. and then you move on and you do whatever's next. And sometimes it's a prop. You know, we need to design like a wizard's wand. That could be a thing. And to your point, like what does that look like? Well, looks like whatever it looks like. So if you prefer drawing in line art, that's what you're gonna do. You prefer photo bashing, that's what you're gonna do. If you prefer 3D design, that's what you're gonna do. It all depends on why they hired you in the first place.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And they're not gonna there's not like a thing where somebody's like, all right, we want you to do thumbnails, we want you to do sit, you know, that is your job. You're the professional. It's not like when you like think about it like this, like you go to order some food. I always like these types of analogies because everyone can kind of understand. You go, hey, you know, I would like a a cheeseburger or something, right? You may ask him like, I want the well done. I want like this, that's, you can ask them very specifics, but then you're not going to tell them like how to grill it, like how to use the grill, like the temperature. I mean, you could, I guess, but that's like a little too much, like hands
I
off.
see.
If you're like Gordon Ramsay, maybe, right? But like if you're just like some average Joe customer, they're not going to do any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you'll start coming off as a Karen, start coming in there like asking
Right.
for every little thing. And so that's kind of the point I'm making, is that like the very specifics is really up to you.
Okay.
The approach that I showed you guys for this class is one of many. It's not necessarily the only approach. This is why I say it's okay to do whatever you feel like, in terms of line art, in terms of what you call it, painting.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is important that you take away from what I'm getting at is like, were you able to make changes during my class? Were you able to iterate? Were you able to design? Because that's what you do on the job.
Gotcha. Mhm.
If you had a hard time designing a character in like a week, like to come up with like different variations, and you have a hard time finishing a character in a month, that's the kind of stuff that you need to know. So when your client says like, how long will it take you? You tell them how long it would take you. You don't kind of lie, and be like, oh, I can do this in a week when you've never done it in a week. It takes
Right.
time. You have to consider that they're going to constantly tell you how bad you are, like what they don't like about what you've shown them,
Mm-hmm.
And be prepared for that type of feedback. Make sense?
Yeah.
And so, what a day by day looks like, so I can give you now some practical examples. Like, sometimes whenever I get approached by a client, they'll be, hey, can you design something for me? And I'm like, yeah, of course. This is what I do. Then I will tell them it takes me X amount of time, depending on how much they want me to do. And what I do is I do that work in that time. So for instance, if they're like, hey, we want you to do a character design for a horror film,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, okay, that's really easy. Like that kind of stuff I can do in like a day, So I'm like, all right, I can like get you like 6 to 8 designs, sketches, like rough sketches by sometime tomorrow. And they're okay, cool. And then I just work on the sketches, and then tomorrow I submit them. And then they take a look at them, and then either we do a call, they send me an email, what they love or what they don't like. Usually they like everything that I do. And then they ask me stuff like, well, which one do you like? And I say, it's not my call. It's up to you. I draw nothing but things I like. So I can go with any one of them. It's really up to you guys, what you guys want. And then they pick one. It's all right. Great choice. And then I do iterations. So variations of what that would look like the best version of that same design. And then from there, they're like, oh, this is sweet. We like all of these things, And again, ask me like, which one do you like? And I'm like, again, I don't give a fuck. And then, and then eventually they pick one they like, and then I just go to render town usually on that one. And if they need turnarounds, I do turnarounds. If they don't, I don't do it.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Other times it's like, hey, we want you to like do this type of design. It's a little bit harder and more involved. Than I tell them, yeah, it's probably gonna take a little more time. And I do it, and then they're just like, damn, all right, like you're done. This is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. And I said, oh, nice. Okay. And then that's it. And that's all I did. It's not like we go through a process. If they are happy, they are happy. That's what happened with Sonic. I designed those drones, and they're like, tight. That's it. Because I did them in 3D, so they already looked finished. And they're just like, this is all we need. So I only really worked on that project for like a week.
How did they discover you for that?
Just my portfolio. I have robots on there. So they're like, right. Hey, you can probably do it. And I've worked with them before, so I have like, they know that I'm an artist that they can rely on. And so, but even before then, like it was like robotic, the stuff that I did for them.
Right.
Yeah. And so ultimately what I'm getting at is like, how do you design, right? That's all that matters. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how to finish a design, you don't know how to finish a portfolio piece, that's going to be a challenging task. Then just learn how to do it at a job. But if you're looking to see if there's something really like violently different, the answer to that is like no. In fact, there's a little bit of what I like to refer to as like the grass is always greener. I'm sure you've heard of this expression.
Yep.
And this is why I always tell people, focus on what you want to do. Don't focus on what you think people want you to do. Right? Because you get that job, and then they basically say, they'll say to you something along the lines of like, or no, you get that job, and then you'll come to realize that something crazy. You know what I mean? Like it's like a job.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay. And especially if it's a job that you don't really care about, like it's like like you learn 3D just because, you heard it's easier to get jobs, which is true. And then you get it and you're just like, wait a minute. I don't really like this at all. And you end up just doing nothing but 3D all the time. And you get really good at 3D because now that's all you're doing. And then your portfolio is full of nothing but 3D artwork. And then you try to apply, and then you can only get 3D work because you're really good at it.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah, it happens a lot, actually, because people are really nervous and they don't have foresight. So I try to give it this type of advice very early. But hopefully that gives some insight.
Yeah, totally.
Who's about to talk? Can hear.
I was turning my mic down because I was I kind of leading into what like Lance asked, because I was wondering like more about like how do you, let's see, like how do you determine your rate as far as like your, as far as like what you're getting paid when you're freelancing? Because that's a big question that's like thrown around a lot. Like what's your take on it?
No, you should get paid pretty well. I usually tell people don't go below something like $30 an hour. I'm actually changing that. I think you should not go lower than like I think nowadays people should ask for way more, like no lower than and this is specifically speaking to freelance, no lower than like $15 an hour. And so if it takes you 10 hours to do a piece, then you charge $500 for that piece. And that is including, iterations, feedback, finalizing the design,
Mm-hmm.
And you might think, well, that's pretty steep. No, you've just been told wrong. Nobody can just start drawing good. You guys are evidence of this. You're taking my class and you guys are already pretty good at drawing. And yet, you can get better at it,
Mm-hmm.
And even at the skill level that you guys are at, you guys can get paid what I just suggested.
Mm-hmm.
It's just harder to do because there seems to be like no middle ground, right? You either work for the big boys or you don't. But there are the little studios. You just got, and we talked about this before, right? You just got to find them. Just as much as they are like you're hard to find, and it's hard to kind of find a studio willing to pay you. It's like they're also like trying to get noticed, and they're also really hard to find. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why going to events, as I mentioned before, and there's going to be a lot of digital events. I'm not sure how they're going to handle the socializing aspect of it, but they exist. I just got out of a meeting the other day with Adobe because they're going to be doing Adobe Max but online. And I was like, dang. So I'm going to still be part of that, just, not in the way that people are used to. And so the point I'm making, though, the general point I'm making is that, you should be very aware of this idea that, if you don't, charge a reasonable rate, you'll get stuck working on something that pays you less than minimum wage, right? Do the simple math usually in your head. Like, think of it like this. Like, let's imagine somebody approaches you and are like, hey, can you work with us? And let's say you just say, hey, I'm gonna do this work for something like $300 easily is a rate that people would ask you to do. Hey, we'll pay you $300 to do these 2 character designs. And in your mind, especially if you're coming from minimum wage, you're like, 2 characters is like nothing. I could totally do that. But then it takes you, 30 hours each, right? It's 60 hours total.
Mm-hmm.
You're only getting paid $5 an hour then. right? Because it's 30 hours in terms of doing all the thumbnail sketches, going back and forth, because you're not a professional still, right? Like, it still takes a while for you to kind of get your bearings. It takes you longer than someone like me, you know? But you look how much you got paid. You got paid like garbage.
Yeah.
You make more working at McDonald's, and you don't need any prerequisite other than like a pulse, right?
Yeah.
Where being an artist, like, there's a reason why they're talking to you, because they can't do it themselves, right? Like, I can make my own hamburgers. It's really just a convenience thing where you buy it somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not like when people make their own home hamburgers, it's not that much worse, right? It's not like noticeably worse than like something at McDonald's, right? It's just convenient. In fact, arguably, it's better when you make it yourself because you can really mess with it, you know?
Yeah.
But like, nobody can just be like, all right, I'm going to just start designing all my characters and from scratch and just all of a sudden do it, you know?
Yeah.
Even with minimal training, they're just not capable of doing this. Yes, leave the charger on. See that? Actually, hold on.
I need your big thumb.
There you go. Turn it down a little bit.
Okay.
Hello?
Hey.
Okay. But yeah, you get what I'm saying though? Like,
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, for instance, I actually do work sometimes where it's only $300. I actually don't mind taking really small jobs. And they say to be like, oh, you know, we only gonna pay you $300. And I say, what do you want? And they're like, 2 characters. And I said, okay, well, you're just gonna have to take them as they are then, right?
Yeah.
And then they're just like, okay, yeah, sure. Which is usually is a pretty high quality, right? And I'll do these 2 characters in under an hour, right? So then I get paid $300 for that hour. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so it's actually really good. Like, that hour was definitely worth my time. They get 2 characters. I get paid $300 for only an hour's worth of work. It's totally worth it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've ever watched any of my painting, like that I've done for the class or outside of class, I paint very quickly, and that's the value of painting quickly is you can just do that stuff. Whenever I work for big studios, I just charge them flat rates because I don't charge them hourly because I work way too fast. Otherwise, my hourly rate would be like ridiculous. I'd be asking for like $600 an hour, and they'll just be like, "Wait, what?" You know, like on paper, it just looks crazy. But I'm just like, it's more like, "Hey, I'll charge you guys like $600, $700, like half a day, or something like this," you know. And I'll charge like $850 for like a full day's worth of work. But sometimes it's like 2 hours, sometimes it's only an hour, right? Depending on what I do. But the results are there. They're paying for the results. They're not paying for my time. You know?
How often do big companies like establish the rate versus like you, for instance?
They do not. I establish the rate. The better
Oh,
you
really?
are, the more you are like a clearly like powerful resource, you know, they're going to go with whatever you want. Unless
Great.
it's super high, then they're just going to find somebody else. And you should just totally just let them go, like, peace, you know. When you're in this better position, I think at the moment you guys might not have that kind of luxury, but eventually you will. And that's the way I think about it, right? So if they're like, hey, you know, we're gonna give you X amount of dollars, and I feel like it's just way too cheap, you know. Like when I art directed for the League of Legends music video, last year, and I actually helped art direct this new video. Hold on a second.
What's the name?
She's in here.
Oh, okay. What's the
Yeah, you can tell Julie to come up here too, actually, and then you can go play. My wife's out. I think you guys heard her leave earlier. So my oldest son is babysitting, but I just told him he's off the hook. But you can think about it, right? Like think about it like this. Okay. Like think about your favorite artists that you really love. You know? Well, let's go through some of my favorite artists. Like look at someone like Ate, right? Pretty great artist. Okay. These are some of the most powerful designs I've ever seen. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, who else could I think of that designs this way? Like, think about it, right? Like, really think, like, who else can you imagine could provide this quality of images? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very few. You see what I'm getting at? Like, it's not like, all right, well, let's just find the next person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, if you're at this level of like skill where you're just kind of like one of a kind, right? Oh, it's funny that I clicked that and their work's most popular at the moment. You know?
Yeah.
Like this right here is pretty cool. Hold on just a second. Delilah, Julian, not too loud, please. I'm still in class. Oh wow, look at this stuff. That's super cool. You know, it's really hard. I think it's like a team of artists. I don't think it's just one. Oh, I dig this one. Yeah, I'll follow you back. You know, like even when you think about like the most typical looking artwork you see a lot of, right?
Yeah.
Like the sexy ladies.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really nice portrait. But like who else? Right? There's a lot more for sure. But even then, right, you're picking from a lot of like a few hundred, not like tens of thousands, you know?
Yeah.
And then even those hundreds, like many of them are already working because they are very good. And that style of work is very popular. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a value to just standing out. Good old Mikhail. Dude, this guy is one of my favorites. Love the way he designs. It's cool that he worked on Ori. That's actually really cool. I wonder how they put his characters into, because that game is fully illustrated, right? I'm
I
super
think so. I don't
curious
have an Xbox or Game Pass, so I can't play it if I want to.
Oh, spoiler below. Oh boy. Oh, he worked on the sequel, huh? Did the game already come out?
Yeah. Yeah, it came out.
The sequel did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did he work on this wall shot? Oh, that's cool. Good on this dude, man. Awesome. Anyway, you get my point though? Like, that's not like you can't just be like, all right, you know, like a company's just like, hey, we're only gonna give you this much, man. Like that's how artists. Oh, hold on just a second. Delilah, you're talking too loud. Don't let me come over there and beat you. I will beat you. You get my point though? Like, do you see kind of
Yeah.
like, you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not like as simple as like, oh yeah, you know, I'm sure companies constantly are just like, we're never gonna pay that. Nah, it's not.
It's pretty much you charge, like you make the quality, you can charge for your quality and for what you're doing. And that's
Yeah,
how it is.
you can start to realize that you definitely have ownership of your style, and you charge. And if you're too expensive, people just won't take your work. And if they don't take your work, you're kind of like, all right, that's fine. I don't get offended.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people feel like they should just take the work regardless. I think if you are in a place where you need to work, yeah, of course you should take every situation with a grain of salt. But that's kind of my overall thoughts about it.
That helps out though, because I didn't know it was actually more on the artist as far as the rate. Like I know from like reading like some of it is, but I didn't realize like that it was that much.
Yeah, you can get paid really well if you're really good. As intuitive as that already kind of sounds, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome though.
Yeah. And I will say, I know in the beginning of this class, we talked a little bit about like some of the stuff that was going on in the art scene, specifically about like the diversity of the industry. You know, I generally believe like people don't realize that the industry is very much a meritocracy. And some people just don't want to believe this. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that there is some little bit of like nepotism and stuff like this, you know, friends and family and, you know, get better opportunities, but that's just how it is everywhere, right? But, you know, the point I'm trying to make is that like a lot of people who are good get jobs because of their goodness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And very rarely, if ever, do I see stories where that's just not true. Like someone was denied an opportunity because of how, like, who they were, like something out of their control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mostly people got jobs based off of what they were capable of doing, right? And mostly the reason why I think this is true is because it's bad business to be like prejudice and discriminate. You know,
Yeah.
if you wanted to be you wanted to like hire one of the best, you know, artists of this style, but you just for whatever reason hating Russians, you know, you're like maybe in Ukraine, there's some rationale to some hate, but even then, right? That's kind of the point of like why discrimination is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there was an artist. There's a really very good artist. I'll keep them nameless, but they were genuinely racist. Like they would post those clearly racist on Facebook, and people like lost it. And
Wow.
that person like got banned from ArtStation, and like I think they lost a lot of
jeez.
opportunities. I mean, it's to be expected. Like they were saying,
Yeah.
like it wasn't like pseudo or kind of like just sounded like someone that just doesn't know better. Right? You know, there's a lot of people that are like that who will just say something that's like indirectly could be racist or should be racist if you really like sat down with them and talked to them about it. I'm sure I've done this too, but never like intentionally, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And and then when you go and like full tilt cancel that individual, I think there's an opportunity lost. That person's not on the fringes, you know. They're someone you can talk to, but if you go full tilt on them, you actually did the opposite effect happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not that. Like this person just generally is like effing Jews, and was just like, wait, what?
Wow.
And they're like, no, they're like the scum of the earth. They don't belong. And like it was like real bad. And I was like, all right, take it easy. And he's a great artist. Like I love his work. You look at his work, it's so good. You know,
Yeah.
I just don't endorse him. I don't tell people who he is either, because I also don't think, because I do believe that there's opportunity to kind of let people learn. I don't know if he has or he cares, but I don't think that you reform people by shunning them. That's the very reason why they think the way they do usually, you know. But getting back to the kind of the point I'm making is that, you know, you should generally focus on merit of work, because it is something that is respected in our industry, regardless of whatever stupid stuff people do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just true. Like I'll use the example of like, you know, when I was talking about like discrimination, you know, when people talk about like, you know, the lack of black voices in industry, which is very true. Like I know all 30 of us, you know, and there's like very few of us in the game industry, very few of us in the film industry. Like when they made Black Panther, there was only one black artist. It's my buddy Phil, and he was just like, I think we need to like bring more black artists. I think that might be a good idea, guys. And Marvel was like, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And so they hired my buddy Marco and a couple other artists, and it was good. It was a good idea because black artists understand black culture, right?
Yeah.
Especially these artists that they hired, like definitely, you know. And it was a great idea. But you know, like they were digging, dude. Like I think this is the part that a lot of people miss. Is it's not like there are just so many and nobody gives them a chance. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It's just generally there's not that many. You know, it's not. It's indirect. It's not like a very obvious like. There must be some sort of nefarious action going on. No, man, they're just grasping at straws, dude. There is nobody.
They're the unicorns of the art world.
Yeah, and it's the same with ladies, man. And I think ladies have a harder time, absolutely, because of the sexualized aspect of it. Because that is a thing. That is like generally a real problem. Like I've seen this, you know. But that is the biggest problem. There is no like women can't be artists kind of attitude. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
nobody thinks that way. And if they do, they are shunned immediately by the industry, you know?
Yeah.
But sexual harassment, all that kind of stuff, yeah, that's definitely a thing. But I also think that it's a lot of it's because just most of these individuals, men in gaming, just don't know how to be around women, you know? Because the very thing that makes them good at game development keeps them insular, you know? And it's a part of the point, and it sucks. But in my whole career, I've only seen maybe like one or two portfolios from women.
Really?
Yeah. So it's the same problem is what I'm getting at. You know? It's not like when I saw a portfolio that was done by a lady, I was like, you see this girl trying to get a job? Don't she know that only boys can make cool stuff? You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't happen. Like, I just never been in a room even where someone said something like that or even remotely implied something like that, you know?
Mhm.
And this is, I'm only speaking to our industry just because I know this might not be true in others. So don't get this twisted. Okay. I do believe that there are other industries where people are just like, I don't know, that lady can do this, you know? But like art is one of those things that's like, in fact, if anything, anybody can do it well, it is actually females, right? Like there is like my wife is just intuitively artistic. Like she just knows what colors go together, right? She like dresses me, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. And I'm like, this is like something I've trained. I still kind of don't get it, you know? So my daughter too, she just naturally is just creative, you know? Well, she did this like whole comic book story the other day, and I was just like floored. I was like, how the hell? Like, who taught you this? You know? So it's clearly something else is going on, and I had a glimpse of what this might be. It could be a cultural thing, right? And for instance, I did a talk in Spain, and what happened was there's this a young woman. She was talking about the injustice of the industry and all this stuff, and she just had this like really warped perspective. And I think in Spain she might have been right, but in general, I was like, well, you know, you can still work in the States. Like we don't really think this way as much as you might like to. And there was two other female panelists, and one of them was just like saying what I was saying, like just not a lot of them apply or take the jobs. And the other female artist was just like, she was like, she's like, oh, you know, I could have worked with you. You know, it could have been a thing. And she's like, I'm glad that you brought that up because I did approach you, and then at the time you said you weren't good enough, and so you declined the job. And she's, I don't think you remember, but I remember. And it was kind of this moment where there was just like this self-reflection, right? And then I was talking to someone So I was talking like this. I was explaining like, you just got to go out there. You got to apply. Just don't be afraid. Just do it. And trust me, most people in the industry are on your side. You're going to run into those real assholes like that one lady was talking about, or the one that was asking the question, because she's giving me all these examples. And I was like, yeah, that sucks. But those guys are assholes. Like I'm telling you, like, you're right. But what ended up happening is one female artist that listened to all that, my words really resonated with her and helped her out. And she approached my wife, because my wife was at the event with me. And she was like, oh, man, your husband, really spoke to me. Like, I really feel like I'm too shy. I don't talk to anybody, I'm really like, just stick to myself, and I don't, really put myself out there. I'm really thinking about doing that. And then my wife is like, well, why don't you tell my husband? Why are you telling me? You should tell him that you're thankful for what he said. And it's like, oh, but I'm not that good. And, I really feel I need to get better to even talk to that guy. And then my wife is like, this is exactly what he was saying you shouldn't do. He was saying this very thing. This is a problem. And she's like, oh my God, you're so right. I didn't even think, I'm already doing it. And she's like, yeah, just go talk to him. My husband's really good. He's a nice guy. And so she did. She came up to me. She said everything that my wife said. And she told me that she told my wife first, and she feels silly because she was like happy about the advice I gave. And then she didn't even take it, And then I was like, I know, that's the point, right? That's so funny. But I was like, but I am happy that you're talking to me now. And I was like, yeah, let's take a look at your portfolio. And I told her, I was like, oh no, your portfolio is good. Like, you are better than you think, Like, don't get in your head. It's very much stuff that I talk to you guys about, right? Like, get out of your own head. Like, you're your own worst enemy. And for whatever reason, the ladies just do this harder on them. They're just much harder on themselves about this type of stuff. In the States too, like if you look at the suicide rates, it's alarmingly getting larger in the young girl section. When you get older, it goes towards men, but when young girls, like they definitely are committing more suicide. And I think it's because of unrealistic standards, specifically in America, right? In
Definitely.
Western culture. It's very sad. It's something I'm really scared about with my own daughter, right? So anyway, I just gave her the validation because she needed it and she deserved it. She was actually very good. And I told her that. I said, you should start applying now. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. Thank you. And I was like, no, it's not nice. It's fucking just true. She was more stylized. So I was like, I don't speak to this artwork, but I know people that will look at this and think that you're great, And so she went back to my wife. She said, like, thank you to her. And she's like, this is amazing. And then my wife's like, yeah, you should come out salsa dancing with us. And she's like, what? That's crazy, And then she thought about it. She's like, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to just start kind of just changing my attitude about this type of stuff. And so she told her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's like, what? Like, you are going to go salsa dancing? She's like, no, I need to do it. I need to like prove to myself that I'm capable of doing adventurous stuff and really, going out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so she did, and she loved it. And she just realized how she was really holding herself back in all of these situations,
Yeah.
A few months later, she got a job. She messaged me and she told me all about it. She was super happy. I was like, duh, I told you were good. And this is just like an observation, and there may be some truth to this, but it's just that for whatever reason, dudes are just more of that. I know for a fact that I am very much this, where I talk to people, I make friends with people, I don't back off, I engage, all the time. And that is a huge benefit. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Even when I look at my own children and my wife, right? So I'll tell two stories. So like when my wife was dropping off the kids at school, I was like, you should make friends with some of the moms. So that way we can get our kids to have play dates and hang out. And she's like, I don't know. I don't really know these people. Like, I don't want to just like talk to random people and bother them. And my wife, if you get to know her, like she's super outgoing. Like she's like incredibly extrovert. You know, she's struggling, dude, with this whole like staying at home shit, you know?
Mhm.
And I was like, just do it. Like you got to talk to these moms. Like as for our kids, like don't think about like how uncomfortable it's for you, you know? And she's just like, I don't know. And she's like, okay, I'll try it. And so she did. And she was like, I tried, but these moms were just giving me like this stink eye. And I just don't feel it, you know? And I was like, all right. So the next day I like took the kids to school. I noticed that my daughter was playing with one of the other kids like really well. And I was like looking at who her mom was. And I was like, hey, I see our kids are playing really well. Like, do you want to like set up a play date? And she's like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's do it. And so I set it up. And then we set it up, and uh, the kids and the parent, or like our kids and all the parents met up after this play date. We all became really good friends. And my wife told me later, like that one mom that I approached was the one that she said gave her the stink eye, right? And I said, oh, really? And she told me, it's like, but now, like, she's like, I love her. She's so funny and she's so fun to be around, you know. And we made a joke about like she just got like resting bitch face. That's all that happened there. And we even to this day make fun of her in that way, you know. But we're like so close now with this person, right? My daughter like doesn't engage with people at all ever, right? So I'm trying to teach her like there's nothing wrong with that, you know. Then I look at my sons. They are like the complete opposite. They're always out like talking to people all the time. Like my son Julian makes friends with people like it's nothing. Collects friends like Pokemon, you know. And I noticed that with all the little boys at school, this is just something that happens. And now I don't know if this is a cultural thing or a genetic bias, right? But whatever that is the competitive edge that gives quote unquote men the advantage in these circumstances, right? And you'll notice that women that do really well also have this kind of tendency to kind of just be more assertive about who they connect with, you know? And so this is why I always give the advice, generally speaking, of like focusing on merit-based stuff, like getting good and talking to people, connecting, socializing. Or if you don't like to do that, put your artwork out there a lot more. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can do it indirect, you know? And trust me, it will work out. One of my female students, for instance, she did this very thing. She goes to the events and all this stuff, and now she's a lead artist at her company. She's a leader. I'm very proud of her, you know? But I know like she's the kind of individual that talks to people and gets engaged, you know? We did this thing at one of these events where we all went to like the strip club and she went and she was like all about it. And I was just like, this is silly, but I love it, man, you know? And I was thinking to myself, like, even this whole situation is like a masculine situation, right? Like, it's like totally can make a lot of people uncomfortable. In fact, it did. And in fact, I encouraged people that when we went, was like, look, we should just go somewhere else. Because a lot of these people want to hang out and a lot of them don't want to go here. Because one of my friends was really adamant about it. And I wasn't too opposed to it. I'm like, yeah, reference, right? But I thought about it. I was like, that is the very thing that dudes do a lot. Not, let's say it's not a strip club, but it's like a just like a regular socialized thing, you know, going to bars, doing stuff like this. Like I was talking to my two friends who are lesbian, you know, and they brought this to my attention too, because they were saying, you know, we wish there was more like lesbian type clubs. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, there's plenty of gay clubs up here in LA, you know? And they're like, no. They're like gay clubs. Like, it's mostly male prominent. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. Because I've been to plenty of them. Because my best friend Edgar is gay, right? And I was like, yeah, you know what? I can't remember a time where I went to a mostly gay club or a gay club that was mostly women, you know? So there's something to this. And I'm not like, this is my observation. I'm not saying that this is the truth. But I'm telling you, when you look at the numbers when it comes to the minority, like specifically, like Black individuals like myself, and women, it's just either a cultural thing or a societal thing, or it's just some sort of genetic disposition for whatever reason. But luckily, these are the types of things that are not set in stone, meaning that just because you're like, let's say you're Black like myself, right, doesn't mean you are now void from working in our industry, because that's obviously not true. I'm like one of the most prominent artists, and the many artists that I know are also in the same boat as me, right? And the way that we got here was because we were really, really good, which is a good thing. You want to kind of make it based off of that, nothing else, right? You want to deserve your place. You don't want to get like a pity show, like, oh, we feel bad for you, we're going to give you this job. You want to get the job because you deserve it. You'll feel better about yourself too, right? Knowing that you belong there genuinely, right? There's like no insecurities hidden based off of whatever agenda that other people might have. So stick to those merits, my friends. I promise you, it'll work out. Got real philosophical and deep. Apologize. But I think it's important. It's like important issues, because a lot of people get caught up on I think the wrong points, and it can make them really be misguided when it comes to portfolio reviews and like the lack of opportunities. Because if you were to truly believe like your lack of opportunities has something to do with something that you have no control over, right? Like your gender and your ethnicity, where specifically in America, where that's just not true, it could be a distraction in the wrong direction. It may make you think that there's some sort of alternative reason why this is not working out for you, right? When in reality, you just might not be good. You want to make sure first that there's no question that you're good. Okay. And then if that's happening, then you can kind of be like, no, there's some genuine discrimination going on here, right? Like I'm like legit a badass. Like I am like approached by many companies. They are this has not happened to me yet, where the people are like, oh, I just heard AJ is half Black and half Korean. I just happen to hate both of those ethnicities. And if it has, I just haven't seen it. Like usually people approach me. I get approached by companies pretty much 3 or 4 times a month. So clearly it's not going on. Okay. Or all the racist companies just don't work for the biggest and baddest companies, Like I said, I think it's just bad business. Yeah. And I've had friends who were in positions where like there were people in studios who had the opposite opinion, where they're just like, we should just hire people because they're different versus like their skill. And it's like a real slippery position to have,
Yeah.
Like it's really slippery on both ends, because on one end it's like you're hiring people not based off of merit, and that makes people who, let's say, did get there on merit are like kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then on the other side is if that person actually, because they weren't based on merit, isn't performing well, they start to feel really self-conscious and insecure about their ability. This is why I was saying, like, you want to make sure you deserve the job, right? And then they start to kind of project that insecurity in the wrong direction, And I've seen this happen, and it doesn't play out well. I'm telling you right now. It ends very poorly. In every regard, it's just not a good situation. And that's why I'm like telling you guys, don't make that mistake. And I know I'm probably only talking to a few of you guys, because only 6 of us in here, right? So only a few of you can really understand what I'm getting at. But trust me, it's something that you can really believe is true, is the merit. Specifically in the game industry, I know this is like 100% true. In the film industry, I think it's mostly true. I haven't worked on too many films, and all the films I worked on, I was either remote or I only worked on for like a few like a few months. Where in the game industry, I've worked on projects for years, so I've seen it kind of go in and out. Any other questions? Got too deep. Everyone's like afraid to talk. The Book of Five Ring is very insightful. Oh, thanks. What's that one about?
It was made by a master Japanese swordsman back in the 1500s, I believe. His name was and his last name was Masashi. I can actually get the book and actually see what his name. His last name was Masashi though, but he's a master swordsman, like unquestionably like the best in his craft. And he broke down pretty much swordsmanship and martial arts into their core principles.
Hmm.
And it's done so in a way that you can apply this to almost anything you do. And it was a book that my father-in-law actually recommended to me that I
Oh,
read,
awesome.
and I found it very helpful.
Right on. I'll check it out.
It's a very small book too. It's very easy to read.
That's good to hear. I don't like reading. So, thing where I don't have to read. All about. I like audiobooks for this very reason.
I also.
Really?
Yeah. Unless it's like instructional. There's something weird about like I don't like reading storybooks, like books that tell a story. Maybe I haven't given it a proper chance. Maybe it's unfair. But every time I have, I've always just I fall asleep. Like just
I'm the
cannot get into
opposite.
it.
Like I like reading
Yeah.
my books because I like kind of doing a whole like I'm gonna go build the world in my vision and just get lost in my head.
Yeah,
But I
maybe
don't
that's
have
what
the
it
time to do it.
is. I'm not like a world builder thinker. I don't think about building worlds. I like just like raw story and character development. I can care less about like the other stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, any other questions, friends? Because I'm going to end the class pretty soon. Put my kids to bed. Going once. Going twice. Oh, damn. Look at these vehicle thumbnails. I'm starting to get it. Starting to get the hang of it.
Bottom right
Thing-
one's cool.
The thing that I was having a hard time with is like thinking about where the pilot goes, like the anatomy of a pilot, like the hand positioning. Like I don't understand vehicle anonymity, so I need to like. I was looking a lot at my reference and seeing how people's hands were. I was like, oh, okay, and like, what does that mean in terms of positioning?
Hmm.
But yeah, I have these ideas, so I'm trying to put them on paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. Some thumbnail sketches. The next step that I'll probably do is put a multiply layer and just start to do this type of thing.
Oh.
Yeah, give them
Holy cow.
Give them some juice.
No kidding.
Anyway, do that later. All right, friends. I appreciate you all. You guys are killing it. Keep up the good work. I believe in you. Don't stop. Believe in. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Now, remember, this is the final stretch. So all the work you guys should be focusing on, it should be hardcore parkour. Really try to make the work count. Okay? With that said, peace out, friends. Have a great night. I'll miss you guys. I'll see you Wednesday of next week. Cheers.
All
All
right.
right. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.